Okay, so that was the major seventh. Now let's get into the dominant seventh. Just like we altered the scales when we took the major scale and made it into the different kinds of minor scales, we're going to take the major seventh arpeggio and alter notes, one note at a time, to change it from one form of the chord to another. The first one we're going to change it to is the dominant seventh chord. This is a very, 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 very important chord in music in general and in jazz as well, and very, very important, and we will talk a lot about it in the future. I'd like to just take a minute to say that there's an interval in the dominant chord, which is what makes it such a strong and important chord, and it's the tritone. The tritone is an interval. It's remember we were talking about intervals, how some have two names. It's the one that's got both the sharp fourth, the augmented fourth, and the diminished fifth name. Okay, so that was the fifth. If you lower it, it's the flatted fifth, the diminished fifth. It's the fourth. And when you raise it, it's the augmented fourth. That interval is right in the middle of the dominant chord. Like on A7, the interval between the 7th degree and the 3rd is a tritone. And it's very, very strong. Notes sometimes are a little bit like planets. They have gravity and they pull. They pull in different directions, especially in relation to each other. Like the moon has the gravity of the Earth is keeping the moon in a certain orbit. Well, it's the same thing with notes. So it sounds very cosmic and spiritual, but it really is true. So the tritone is really a pulling chord. It creates tension that pulls you in two different directions, actually. What it is, if the dominant chord is in the key of D, the dominant chord is A, right? That's the 5 chord. We'll get into an explanation about that. It wants really strongly to go to D. That's called a cadence, right? It wants to resolve to a cadence. There's tension, release, pull, and response. And that inner voicing of the tritone is really what's pulling. Ba, 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 ba. So that's why the dominant chord is really, really important. And it kind of pulls the harmony in different directions in jazz songs and kind of tends to lead you where you need to go. So it's an important arpeggio to learn, and let's get into it. So we're going to go back to the major 7th arpeggio, again starting in the same position. We did the last one in C, did one in A. Let's do this one on G, okay? So the G scale, first position again, is getting sick of hearing this, but I like to drill it in. Those 6 positions are important. So the arpeggio is this one. That's the major 7 arpeggio. For the dominant chord, we're going to lower the 7th degree. Instead of a major 7th, it's going to be a dominant 7th, a minor 7th. It's lowered 1/2 step and it becomes a dominant chord. So, it sounds like this. It's a different sound. Here's the major 7. Here's the dominant 7. And of course, it's this chord, G7. Now let's do it as an arpeggio. I'm going to do it nice and slow so you can play along. Okay, now we'll move down to the 2nd finger and do the same thing. Remember, it's coming off of this major 7 arpeggio. There's the major 7, and we're going to lower it, right? Down to that note, and the next octave is. That's where the 7th is in the major version, so we're going to lower it 1 step there. Now let's do it nice and slow. We're going to get open strings if we go to the pinky in this position, so we'll slide all the way up here again and do it up here. So the major seventh is like this. Right? But we're going to lower the seventh, so we're going to get okay. Next position, we switch right over to the fifth string, first finger. I'll just go right to the arpeggio now. Second finger on the fifth string. Only up half an octave there. And then the pinky. So those are your dominant seventh arpeggios in all six positions. I urge you to really work on this. Both the major seven, all these seventh chords arpeggios, they are super important. And they're going to be very helpful when we start improvising through chord progressions, which we're going to get to very soon. I don't want it to be too analytical, but it is important to have this knowledge both physically and up here.